If you want to quit your job and start a business, should you side hustle first and then quit, or should you quit your job and then put all of your effort and time into building up your business? Well, when I was ready to leave my corporate job, I took both approaches. So I had side hustled for a few years, but I ultimately decided that I didn't want any of those side hustles to be my full-time business. But by that point, I was ready to leave my corporate job, and so I decided to just quit and build my business after I quit. So in this video, I'm going to discuss each approach, the pros and cons, and how to make each approach work for you so that you can start to move forward and create the business and life that you dream of. And really quick, if my voice sounds a little funny today, I am sick while I'm filming this video, so that's why. So let's dive into each approach, starting with the side hustle to quit option. So with this option, you're starting a side hustle and you're building that up while you still have your full-time job with the hopes of quitting your job down the road and taking the side hustle full-time. So my example with this is my photography side hustle. So one of the first things I thought I wanted to do when I realized I was ready to stop being an engineer was move on to being a photographer. And this was an existing skill set that I already had. And so I thought, why not just switch my hobby into a business? And so I did this for a couple years where I learned the ropes of being a portrait and wedding photographer. And I was working with people and building up my portfolio. And I did eventually start to get paid clients for this business. And so a few of the nice things about this approach was that it was kind of low stakes because I already had my full-time income, so I didn't really need to worry about photography supporting me right off the bat. And I was also able to validate my idea and put my work out there and start getting paid clients so that I had a sense that this business could work as a full-time business once I was ready for that. But on the other side, there were some cons when it came to this approach. And so like I said, this is low stakes, but because it was low stakes, I went really slowly. I kind of wasn't giving it my all because I still had the comfort of my full-time job, which allowed me to procrastinate and be up in my head and kind of play small and do all those things that kind of really slowed down my progress. Another thing is that you end up working evenings and weekends because you have a Monday to Friday full-time job. The only time you have for your side hustle is evenings and weekends. And so while you're building it up, you're working 2 jobs, which can be pretty tiring if your full-time job leaves you feeling pretty drained already. Another kind of unexpected thing that happened while I was building my photography business and continuing to work as an engineer is I started to have imposter syndrome. So I started to feel like an imposter at work because I knew that I was ready to quit being an engineer and I was ready to become a photographer. But I also had imposter syndrome as a photographer because I was like, oh, I'm actually an engineer trying to be a photographer. So I sort of had like double imposter syndrome, which I wasn't expecting. And I also was just having like some identity things going on because I was now switching my identity from full-time corporate desk job person to a creative who sets their own schedule and is like a photographer and does that sort of stuff. And so it takes a while to kind of switch over your identity. And this can be tough when you're still working in your full-time job because you can't really step into your new identity yet because you still have to maintain your old identity at work. And the last kind of con, which relates to the first point that I made, is that because it's a side hustle, it can feel like a hobby, and you can get into this mindset of seeing it as a hobby that just kind of makes you a few bucks on the side, and you don't really take it serious enough or put in the effort or set things up in a way that it can go full-time. And some of the objections that you may have when it comes to this approach could be, well, I don't have the time or the energy to side hustle. My job already takes up a lot of my time. I feel super drained after work. I just can't see myself now working a second job. And if you're like me, you may also have some worries around what your coworkers or what your employer may think. So I was definitely worried when I was building up my photography business that my coworkers would hear that I was doing this and think, what are you doing? Like, this is so strange or so silly. You have a perfectly fine, stable, secure engineering job. Why would you want to be a photographer? So I definitely had that kind of narrative playing in my head that made me feel just a little bit shy about what I was doing. And as far as what my employer would think, I think that's something that you need to look into, like your own employer's clauses as far as like what they'll allow. And I think that varies from employer to employer, but I wasn't really worried about my employer finding out that I was doing like photography on the side. I think a lot of people have side businesses, and this is not anything that would affect my work when I was at work. So when I think of this approach, I think it's best for people that have a lot of responsibilities already in their life and they want that security and stability and less of a rocky transition from your full-time job into owning your own business. And so if you can build up your side hustle on the side to the point where you're replacing a decent portion of your income, you have more of a smooth transition and it's way less risky. But I will say that if you want to take this approach, you need to be very focused and determined, and you really need to have your eye on that end goal of building your business. Otherwise, you may just get sucked back into the comfort of your 9-to-5 job, of that steady paycheck, and you'll never actually make the leap into the life that you're dreaming of. Okay, so let's talk about the other approach now, which is quitting your job first so that you can put all of your time into building your business. So like I said, once I had done side hustling for a couple years, I knew that none of those side hustles were really what I wanted to do. I had tried photography, graphic design, an Etsy shop, things like that. And I just knew that none of them were really going to be my business. And I had come across the idea of coaching, and I had this really strong feeling that that was what I wanted to do. But at the same time, I was ready to quit my job, and coaching was basically just an idea at this point. And I didn't have an audience or any of that stuff, but I was really ready to quit my job. I had been planning and working up to it for years, and I was finally at a point financially where I was ready to quit my job because I had that savings and that buffer, and I had paid off all my debt and things like that. So I took the leap to quit my job without having any sort of actual business started. So what were the pros of this approach? Well, my 9-to-5 job left me so exhausted and drained at the end of every day that I just really wasn't feeling like I had the energy and the creativity and the headspace to really pour into a business and make it something that I wanted. So by quitting first and removing myself from that engineering identity and showing up to work every day and putting on my engineer hat, I was really able to clear my headspace and clear out the distraction and put all of my effort into my new identity and my new direction, which was being self-employed and working towards being a full-time coach. Another pro that won't be for everyone is that when you quit your job and you just have a few months of savings, you really need to make the business work. And that sort of pressure can really make you get into action and take the steps that need to happen to make your business viable more quickly than if you were building it up as a side hustle, kind of viewing it as a hobby, maybe procrastinating a bit, that sort of thing. And of course, the cons to this approach are that your business is not generating income from day one. And another possible con to this is that if you haven't started finding customers or selling your product or whatever you're going to do, you may not have a validated business idea yet. And so when you try to actually put that business idea out there, people may not want it. And then you're kind of left scrambling for, okay, wait, what am I going to do now? So of course, the main risk and con with this approach is that it's far more risky financially, which are probably the main objections that come to mind when you think about taking this approach for yourself. You may be thinking, this is way too risky, and what if it fails? Now I've left my job and I have basically no backup. So this approach is probably best for people who have fewer responsibilities or who can really downsize their responsibilities and their monthly expenses. Like, can you get your partner to help pay for more rent? Or can you move back in with your parents temporarily? Or things like that. Like, can you downsize your responsibilities while you build up your business? This is also for people who are more risk tolerant and people who have that support system in their life. So maybe at this point, you have an idea of which approach would work better for you. Let's talk about how you can make these approaches work as you transition from your job to your business. So I think the number one piece of advice that I would give if you want to side hustle and then quit your job, is that you need to be really focused and determined. You need to have a really strong vision of what you want your life to look like that's going to keep you motivated to continue working on your business when you're tired, when you just don't want to, when you've already worked 40 hours this week. You really need that vision that's going to keep you with your head down and focus on what you want. So your future vision needs to be more enticing than the comfort of your job. And for me, I had this vision and it was kind of fueled by being laid off all the way back in 2016. I realized I don't want this to ever happen again. I want control of my destiny, but I also wanted some other things. I was tired of working so much at a 9-to-5 job. I was tired of being stuck at a desk all the time. I wanted to be able to go outside and just enjoy life more. And I had this really strong vision for what I wanted that wasn't working in an office for someone else. And if you're leaning more towards quitting first and then building your business because you just need that space in your life to be able to make it happen, then here's some things that might help you out. So the first thing is definitely consider the support systems that you had. Like I talked about earlier, do you have supportive family? Do you have friends that maybe you could crash on their couch or something like that? Do you have a supportive partner that could help you temporarily while you're building your business? Also, do you have the ability to cut back on your expenses? Can you move to a cheaper apartment? Or like I said, move in with your parents and maybe pay no rent for a while you build up your business? What are the things that you can do? Cut your subscriptions, things like that, in order to reduce your cost of living so that you aren't burning through money as quickly when you have no income. Another thing is maybe you need to be open to working a part-time job. So if you need more space and you're ready to leave your 9-to-5, maybe you quit that and then you pick up part-time hours at a coffee shop or something like that, just to have a little money coming in, reduce the stress, and let you fully focus on your business. Another thing that really helps when you have this approach, and you probably shouldn't quit your job if you don't have this, which is having savings. And for me, I also added on top that I paid off all my debt because I didn't want the risk of missing a student loan payment, which is a big ding on your credit score. So there was things like that I just wanted to not have that stress while I had no income in the beginning. And so you have to think about, how much time do I really think it'll take to build up this business? What's my risk tolerance? If I want a bit more of a cushion, maybe you save up a whole year's worth of expenses at your reduced expenditure rate. Or maybe you just want 6 months and you think that you can really get your business going in 6 months if you just have all of your time and energy to dedicate to it. And another thing that I would recommend is at least have your business idea before you quit. I think it'll be really stressful if you're just completely starting from scratch without even an idea, but I do understand that it can be hard to think about doing other things when you're so immersed in your job and you're so drained and stressed from your job. Maybe you really do just need that space to clear your head for a couple months and get that inspiration. But if you can, try and get your idea first. So there's my brief overview of 2 different approaches to starting a business so that you can quit your 9-to-5 job. I hope this overview has helped you consider different things from different angles about these approaches, and maybe you have a sense now of what approach would work for you so that you can get going and start creating that life that you love. So if you enjoyed the video, please give it a big thumbs up. And if you enjoy this type of content, then make sure to subscribe for weekly videos like this. And with that, I will see you in the next video.